The Sony RXo Mark II. Is this the best ever miniature vlog camera? Coming in at around £730, the latest miniaturized offering from Sony is the world's smallest and toughest compact camera. With that 1-inch sensor, a 24mm equivalent lens, the flip-up screen, and 4K recorded internally, this miniaturized camera offers far more than its form suggests. And unfortunately, that form factor will see this camera compared to some premium action cameras out there, such as the GoPro Hero 7 and the DJI Osmo Action. And in truth, this is anything but an action camera. Sure, it's waterproof, dustproof, shockproof, and crushproof, but the features of this camera make it far more akin to something like the Sony RX100. It is a feature-packed miniaturized camera that covers most of the features that the average video shooter will want from a camera. You do have that 4K recorded internally, a huge 1-inch sensor, and even super slow-mo up to 1000 frames per second. So there's a huge amount to cover here, and with that, let's just jump straight in and look at the good bits of the Sony RXo Mark II. First up is the image quality, and it's pretty incredible for a palm-sized camera. That 4K internal recording is a huge and welcome addition from the previous model of this camera, making this a perfectly usable video camera for even professional applications. Next up is the build quality, and it is incredible how well made this thing is. It is by far the most rugged video camera I have ever used, and it's not an action camera. It is waterproof at up to 10 meters, it is drop proof up to 2 meters, and crush proof for up to 440 pounds. Really, it's probably the best made camera you're ever going to use. The versatility of the camera, which is really its big draw for us, it is an incredibly versatile little video camera. The fact that you can record 4K up to 30 frames per second, but if you drop down to 1080, you can get the buttery smooth 120 FPS is absolutely incredible. It means it is perfectly applicable for pretty much every professional situation you're going to put it within. Adding on top of that, you also get the ability to record that super slow-mo up to 1000 frames per second. Now there's a caveat to that. The image quality when you're at 1000 frames per second is not very good. There's lots of compression, lots of artifacting. You're going to notice a lot of noise in the image, but the world is so much fun at 1000 frames per second, it's still a feature that I'm going to use all the time. So with a mic input, the flip-up front-facing LCD screen, and great internal audio, the RXo Mark II is obviously catching the eye of vloggers out there. However, there are some key shortcomings for vlogging. The first is the fixed 24mm focal length, which isn't really the widest. It's not wide enough for great selfie shooting. I have to get my arm quite extended to get it right. There's also some bigger issues, such as the lack of image stabilization and no continuous autofocus, but we'll cover those in more details later. All in all, it's passable as a vlog camera, but does have some key shortcomings. So with all that said, let's jump in and look at the bad bits of this palm-sized video camera. First up is the fact there is no in-body image stabilization. There is an electronic stabilization, or steady shot as Sony call it, but it's far from perfect. All that means is that any handshake or micro jitters that you get from using this camera handheld are going to be noticeable in your footage, and that is a drawback. It's a compromise Sony had to make this camera shockproof, but it's one that is definitely an issue, especially for anyone that's wanting to use this camera in a run and gun, documentary or vlog style. Next up is the fact that there is no continuous autofocus. It is a pretty big deal. You do have a good autofocus system, but it is a locked single point system. So when you press record or half press record, it will find focus for the subject and lock it off. That means if your subject moves, your focus distance changes, then your shot's going to become soft. It's an issue that you just have to bear in mind when you're using this camera. Beyond that, my issues with this camera are only minor ones. You have things that are just a little bit frustrating, such as the front-facing articulating monitor switches off after a short time during recording, which can be annoying. You also have the fixed aperture of the lens is f4, and that's quite slow, so shooting indoors or in a low light situation can become an issue. And finally is the fact that the footage is 420 8-bit. And all that means is that for color grading, there's not a huge scope to work with before the image starts to break down. You can record S-Log, so a flat image profile within this camera, but it's not ideal because you don't have a lot of data to work with. So use one of their standard image profiles and you'll get the best out of the image from this camera. So as a portable B camera, or for filmmakers that want a miniaturized rugged camera that puts out a fantastic image, the RXo Mark II is certainly a great option. If you're in the market for an action camera, then absolutely don't consider this because it isn't one. It doesn't have the wide angle of view, it doesn't have that infinity focus that you'd expect from an action camera. But beyond that, if you're a YouTube creator or a vlogger, this camera does definitely cover a lot of the bases that you'll want from a video camera. But as with everything, it does have its compromises. So if you'd like to find out more about the Sony RXo Mark II, there's links below, and whilst you're down there, why not consider subscribing to our channel, or even joining our Filmmakers Club, our monthly Patreon, where you get access to our filmmaking assets to help you on your filmmaking journey. That's been my grab and go review of the Sony RXo Mark II. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.